Hello everyone, this is Neha Sharma here. Today in this video we are going to discuss some of very important extra questions of the third level, which is chapter number 1 from your Vistas book for class 12th. So let's discuss first extra short answer type of questions. So let's talk about question number 1. Why did Charlie meet a psychiatrist? So the answer is Charlie met a psychiatrist since he was in a dilemma. He felt sure that he had been on the third level of the Grand Central Station, which everyone knows has only 2 levels. Even the presidents of the railroad would swear on a stack of timetables that there were only 2 levels. So that's why he met to his friend psychiatrist. Second question is, what was the psychiatrist's diagnosis? So as we all know, the psychiatrist said that Charlie was unhappy. The modern world is full of insecurity, fear, war and worry that oppressed him, and he just wanted to escape. That is only the reason of his escapism. What proof did the psychiatrist provide? Charlie's psychiatrist and his friends said that his stamp collecting was an indication of his desire to seek a temporary refuge from reality, as was his collection of first day covers. What was Charlie's argument when the psychiatrist told him that the stamp collection was a temporary refuge from reality? So Charlie argued that his grandfather lived in a nice and peaceful times, yet he was the one who had started the stamp collection. He did not need any temporary refuge from reality. He added that President Roosevelt also collected stamps too. So this is the argument he gave here to protect himself. How does Charlie describe Galesburg, Illinois in 1894? So Charlie describes it as a wonderful town with a leisurely way of life, with big old frame houses, huge lawns, tremendous trees, and a peaceful and tranquil world. During summer evenings, people sit in their lawns with men smoking cigar and women waving palm leaf fans. The First World War was 20 years away and the Second World was 40 years into the future. So this is how he described Galesburg, Illinois, and this we have noted down also when we did the explanation of the third level. Question number 6 is, what was a first day cover? So dear kids, as I told you, this first day cover is when the new stamp is issued. So the stamp collectors buy some and use them to the mail envelopes to themselves on the very first day of the sale, and the postmark proves the date, and the envelope is called first day cover. They are never opened because just you can put a blank paper inside the envelope, or it can be empty, right? But there is surety, and that is authorized from the with that postmark that this stamp was released on such and such date. So that is known as first day cover. In other language, you can say when a stamp collector who was in habit to do that, he or she can go to the post office, can buy the stamp, and on his own address he can post that letter with that on the envelope. He can paste that stamp and that postmark with the post office people they use. So that is the proof of the release of the date. So that letter, that envelope is actually called first day cover. Question number 7 is, what roles does the first day cover play in the story? So here one night, while fussing with the stamp collection, Charlie comes across a first day cover that should not have been there. It had been mailed to his grandfather at his homes in Galesburg in July 1894. However, instead of a blank paper, it contained a letter for Charlie from Sam. It urged him to come back to the third level with Louisa and keep looking for it till he found it. So this was not true actually. This is only his creation and his fantasy, and you can say the escapism, because he was feeling oppressed in the world, full of fear, insecurity, etc. Question number 8 is, what was the content of the note that Sam wrote to Charlie? So this is given by the end of your chapter, and here it writes that Sam said that he had found the third level, that he had already been there for 2 weeks. Life was peaceful, calm and tranquil. He urged Charlie and Louisa to go back to the third level and keep looking for it till they found it. Question number 9 is, how was Charlie often lost on the Grand Central Station? So dear kids, actually he was, you may say he was an eccentric man. He was an aberrant man who is not believing on the reality, but he wants other to believe on him what he is thinking, right? So what happened, Charlie had went to the Grand Central Station hundreds of times, he said. However, at times he was always lost in new doorways and corridors. Once he entered a tunnel and came out in the lobby of a hotel also. Another time he reached in an office, which was impossible actually. It cannot be, right? So it was his illusion, it was his fantasy, it was his own creation, which he wanted us to believe on that. So that's why he was an escapist. How did Charlie compare the Grand Central to huge tree? Why? Charlie always found new tunnels and the staircase at the Grand Central. He began to suspect that Grand Central was like a huge tree. It used to push out new corridors and tunnels like roots of a tree. Question number 11 is, how did Charlie reach the third level? So as we discussed earlier in the story that Charlie had been late to his office. He desired to reach home early, so he went to Grand Central to catch a suburban train. He was lost in corridor and he thought it was the second level, but he has reached the third level. This we have seen in the starting of the story. Question number 12 says, how did Charlie realize that he was on the third level? Charlie realized this as there were fewer ticket windows. The information booth was of wood and old looking. The lights were flickering as they were open flame gas lights, and there were brass spittoons on the floor. The locomotive had a tunnel shaped stack. So this much you have to write down when you are writing answer in short. Question number 13 is, how did Charlie make sure that he had actually travelled in the past? Charlie went to a newsstand. He saw the news of stack of newspaper there. It was the World. The World you have to write down in single inverted commas because that's the name of the newspaper, which was not published any longer. The lead story was about President Cleveland. Later, he discovered in the public library files that it was printed on June 11, 1894, right? So this he wanted to just give the excuse actually that he is not escapism, but he had reached to third level. Why did Charlie rush back from the third level? So Charlie wanted 2 tickets for Galesburg, but when he offered the fare, his money was different looking from the money of those days. The clerk thought the money was fake. He threatened to get Charlie arrested, and Charlie rushed back to escape because jail was jail in 1894 too. How did Charlie learn that his psychiatrist friend had reached Galesburg of 1894? So one day Charlie discovered a first day cover in his stamp collection. You must remember when he went to that third level, and once again he went to search, but he could not find that. So he is writing, the poet is writing actually there, that after that he lost somewhere, and he did not find the third level, and that time he stopped his that search of third level, and he switched over to first day covers. So when he was searching, when he was busy with that, he found a first day cover in his stamp collection, and it was addressed to his grandfather at the Galesburg address. In it he found a letter of July 1894 addressed to him by Sam. This proved that Sam had reached Galesburg of 1894, but it is not true. It was only the escapism of Charlie. Question number 16. What did Sam write to Charlie from Galesburg? Sam had written to Charlie that he had discovered the third level and reached Galesburg. He found Galesburg to be peaceful and friendly as Sam had described to him. He exhorted Charlie to keep looking for the third level and reach Galesburg. How do you find the ending of the story surprising? So Sam was a psychiatrist. He got worried about Charlie as he told Sam that he reached the third level. He firmly believed it did not exist. However, he himself was not only convinced but also escaped to Galesburg. Now we have to discuss some of the questions which are long type of questions, answers where you have to give. So see what is the difference between short and long answers. In brief you have to write down the short answers, and whatever you know about that particular incident which is being asked in the question, that you have to highlight all the main points actually of that incident you have to write down. Discuss the importance of Sam's letter to Charlie. This is the first question. So Charlie, the protagonist of the story, gives up the hope of ever finding the third level again and resumes his hobby of collecting stamps. It is then that he comes across the first day cover, which he had not seen before and should not have been there. It carried the stamps of July 1894 and had been posted from Galesburg, Illinois. As he reads the content of the letter, a shocked Charlie realizes that it was from Sam, his psychiatrist friend. Though he had earlier hoped that the third level existed, now he had actually found it and been there for 2 weeks. Very different from the modern world, full of stress, worry and insecurity, Sam describes it as peaceful place, full of warm and friendly people and old world charm. He urges Charlie and Louisa not to stop their search and not to give up till they find the third level. Thus, Sam reaffirms Charlie's conviction about the existence of the third level. So see how you noticed here that what are the points I have given here. So all those points you have to give. This is not mandatory that you have to copy the same answer. This is sample answer only. You can write down in your own way also, using some new words also, but the content of the answer should be this only. The third level explores an intersection of time and space. Discuss. So this we have discussed in the introduction of the story also, that Jack Finney gives time travel a new dimension through his protagonist Charlie. The third level is the point where the past and the present meet. One evening on his way back from work, Charlie finds himself in the third level of the Grand Central Station in New York. He discovers that things were different and realized that he is He is back in 1894. It was the period that Charlie would love to be in. An excited Charlie wants to buy two tickets to Galesburg, a peaceful town in the pre-war period, which Sam, Charlie's psychiatrist friend, interprets as his desire to escape the stress of modern living. Later, Sam, giving himself, withdraws all his savings and exchanges it for 1894 currency. He thus is able to cross time and reach a quiet and peaceful past where his services as a psychiatrist would not be required. Louisa believes that one can cross the time dimension only after Sam's letter of affirmation. Thus, the happiness of all the three characters of the story revolves around the third level. Question number 3 says, Charlie wanted to go home quickly, but he reached the third level. How did he get there? So we have to write the content which is written in the starting of the story. As I told you, the actually story started from that portion. So that you have to write down here, that one summer night Charlie was late at office and he wanted to go home quickly, and he decided to take the subway from Grand Central. He went into the Grand Central and went to the steps of the first level. Right, then he went down to the another flight of the stairs to reach the second level. He found an arched doorway and was lost in the corridor where he was slanted downwards. He thought it to be wrong, but he continued walking. He found nobody on the way. From there, the tunnel took a sharp turn to the left. Then he went down a short flight of stairs. For a moment, he perceived he had once again come back to the second level. However, everything there was different and old-fashioned. There were fewer ticket windows. The information booth in the center was made of wood and looked very old. It was then he realized suddenly that he had reached the third level, and to make it sure, he went to the newspaper boy. Next, question number 4 is, what was the third level like? How did Charlie know he had bumped into past? So, as discussed earlier too, there was no third level at Grand Central Station. It was only his fantasy and his escapism which leads him to reach to the third level, which at all did not exist. So let's see what we have to write down. There was no third level at the Grand Central. It was only Charlie's journey into the past, and the third level appeared to be railway station of about a century ago. The rooms were smaller and the ticket windows were few. The information booth in the center was of wood and old-fashioned. The man in the booth wore sleeves, protectors and a green eye shade. Lights were flickering as they were open flame gas lights. Brass spittoons were found on the floor. Most people wore beard and sideburns and fancy mustache also. He saw a man who had a golden watch also. A woman wore a dress with leg of mutton sleeves and high buttons shoes, and the locomotive was small with a funnel shaped stack, and that was of Courier and Ives Company. A newsboy had stack of the World. It was published on June 11, 1894. So these all things made Charlie sure that he bumped into the past. So this was all about the question answers. Almost all the important questions we have covered here in this video. I hope you got how to write down the answers. As I told you earlier too, these are only the sample answers. I am not forcing you to copy the same answers. You can create your own answer too with your own ideas and with a lot of new words. But I will advise you to improve your vocabulary, and for that you have to listen the news Okay, the English news channels, please read the newspaper. If you are not getting the newspaper on internet and Google, you can get the news of different, any day. It's not the fresh newspaper is required, but any topic you can read so that you can get the good collection of vocabulary. It will help you for the good expressions in writing. Thank you very much. That's all for the day. Please note down the question and answers in a notebook.